The focus for tonight is really about a few things. We're going to be exploring a little bit the nature of stress. We're going to be talking about values and how a principled or value-driven life leads to greater happiness results, so a larger and more sustained happiness factor, and then just some perspective on what it means to actually have a value-centered life, and just different ways of understanding the values that we espouse, or we even just think we espouse. Okay, so I wanted to start with a question, and since it's, I want this to be participatory, and the format of this is a little different than the last time. So between the last time and this time, I was doing a little thinking and trying this out. And so I wanted to start with this question. What are things that cause us stress? Our awkward silence is a source of stress. What are things that cause stress in your life?
Future worries.
I'm sorry?
Future worries.
Future worries, okay. What kind of worries?
Maybe in terms of getting a job and something like that. Getting settled.
Okay, getting a job, getting settled. I'm guessing everything that goes with it. Not just getting the job then, but being successful in the job. Being able to work in the place that you want. Being able to have fill in the blank. Okay, yeah, those are very applicable ones. Vaishali Mataji, what about you?
Like if I think really, I will be really stressed on my family matters the most.
Okay.
Like related to my mother specifically.
Okay, so things that so values that we have, people or things that are important to us. It's kind of an interesting package here because on the one hand, we are either aspiring for or invest ourselves a lot in a certain direction. But at the same time, those things that we are aspiring for or place a lot of value on, we're saying those are causing us stress. So that's kind of an interesting contrast here. Normally, you would expect something that we value not necessarily be a source of stress. And so
your face is not visible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like only it's not centered, it's corner.
It's visible, Mataji, I guess.
Yeah, it's visible.
You are able to see whole?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why I am not able to see. Okay, fine.
Just making sure my face is still on. Yeah, that's good.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna, Saket.
Hare Krishna.
How are you?
Good, good. We were just talking about tonight's theme, and we're just talking a little bit about things that cause us stress. And so you joined just before we were on to jump to the next thing. So if you wanted to share, what are some things that cause you stress?
Recently?
However you want to answer it.
Recently, just I'm a bit last minute guy who submits assignment in last minute. So that is my
correct stress.
So the stress of a deadline. And there's different kinds of stress too. There's stress that can be debilitating. We can freeze in that stressful environment. And there's also stress that is helpful or beneficial. It inspires us to get that assignment done on time. As
yeah.
And so we can understand stress in a few ways as well. There's distress and eustress. So eustress is considered the good kind of stress, the impetus to perform, to do something. Like speaking for myself, for some reason, physics and I just never clicked. And this was in a Physics 1 class at IIT. And nothing ever made sense to me until the final exam. Like I was literally sitting there writing the exam, and suddenly it all just made sense. I got it. And I did really well on the exam. But it was just kind of interesting that being in the pressure of that moment is what was the necessary catalyst for me to actually like synthesize the material. So stress can have that kind of thing. Then there's distress, where I'm sure either we've been in that situation or we've known people that are in that situation where the stress, the stakes are so high, the perceived loss is so high, or the perceived demands are so high that we or others that we may know just shut down. We can't deal with it. And that's more the distress side of stress, that rather than being a catalyst for performance, for being our best, it closes any impetus we have down. So interestingly enough, there's also, I first of all, I really appreciate and respect you all for sharing these things that you find to be stressful in your lives, or sources of stress, because that requires a certain amount of vulnerability, a certain amount of trust within the group to share something that's personal. So thank you for sharing that. But in general, if somebody was to go up to you and ask you, do you feel stressed out? What kinds of things do you feel stressed out? Like let's look at Vedant, your example about you were sharing that you were feeling a little bit of stress about the future. But if somebody was to ask you, how is everything going? How's your school going, or down the line, how's your career going? What generally would an answer be on that?
It'll be fine.
Yeah, fine. How are you doing? Fine. You? Fine. We're all fine. There's the kind of anecdotes about somebody who poses so happy in their social media, so confident, so self-assured, and then they commit suicide a few days later, or exposed for some terrible like crime or some kind of tragedy playing on in the background. And they could be genuinely happy as well in some of those cases, but just the idea that there's sort of pressure, an unwritten social contract that we have to be fine, we have to be okay, we have to be well dressed. So in a way, it's a lot like a glacier. Looks beautiful on the surface, but there's so much beneath it that, take the example of the Titanic, could be quite dangerous or quite disturbing. So underneath that stress, the resulting possible depression, or at least not feeling your best, there's that need to present the image that everything is okay. And a lot of how we even get into those situations, so things that may be stressing us out, or things that we value but are a source of stress, are really governed by our values. The values guide our decisions, our desires, how we spend our time, how we respond to situations. So there's a story. Has anyone heard the story of the potato, the egg, and the tea leaf?
No.
No?
No.
You don't know the story of the potato, the egg, and the tea leaf? Well, neither did I. So I'll tell you. So we can think about the qualities. This is a story about qualities. So when you boil a pot of water and you throw a potato in there, what happens?
Potato gets spoiled.
You don't cook much, do you then? Just joking. Oh, when you throw a potato in boiling water, you cook it. It gets soft. It gets edible. So you leave it in too long and it disintegrates. So in that sense, yes, you're correct. It gets spoiled. So forgive me, I'm just being a little playful.
No problem.
And if you throw an egg into boiling water, it gets hard. And if you throw a tea leaf or a coffee bean or some spices, what happens?
It blends.
Yeah, the water starts to take on the qualities of the spice or the tea. Or the water gets transformed.
Yeah.
So the story in a way is an allegory. It's not necessarily the situation that is causing us the stress, because we all, have aspirations. We all have present day responsibilities, and people respond to them in different ways. So it's not the situation in itself that is a stressor. It is our values, what we're made up of, that make that difference in how we respond and interact with that situation. The hard, strong potato or carrot or any vegetable you want to boil becomes soft, malleable, mashable. Eventually can disintegrate, can get spoiled. The egg appears watery and delicate, but in the stress of that situation becomes hard, becomes firm, becomes strengthened. And the tea leaf doesn't really become, it doesn't dissolve, it doesn't become stronger. It changes, it transforms the environment around it. So it's about understanding how can our values help us to be in that present state of mind, to be able to respond rather than react, to process and act that eustress channel rather than the de-stress channel. Does that make sense? Thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if these values are so integral to how we respond to certain situations, where do we get our values? If they're so integral, something so integral to our lives, to our futures, to our interactions, where do we get them from?
Family, like.
Okay, family. So
Family, then our teachers, like whom, like it's one, like throughout our journey, whomever we meet, some, like we really get impressed by few people. If we hear some lectures, like even those will, like we will try to cultivate those values.
Who else?
Books.
Huh?
Books.
Books, okay. Nice.
Social media.
Social media, yeah, that's a huge one too. Yeah. And some examples on these. So like kinds of values that we would get from our family.
How we behave, interact, talk.
Okay, so establishing social norms.
Yeah.
And then, Shelley, it sounds like also like a strong sense of the importance of family is also, maybe I'm supposing too much, but since you had mentioned that earlier, my assumption is that the value of a very family-centric outlook is something very important to you.
Yeah.
Is a value that you espouse. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Nice. And so yeah, family, books, social media, larger culture, formal education institutions, our peers are both a source of and reinforcer of values. General media, so many places can be sources of values. Now, where the tricky part comes in. Typically, do we choose the values we espouse? Like, Vedant, did you make a conscious decision one day to say, my career, so getting into the right school and my career, and all the things that come with that, did you make a conscious choice to say that is important? That's what is going to be the thing I care most about, or not necessarily care the most about, I shouldn't say that, but is that the thing that I'm going to allow me to be emotionally affected? You know, since you mentioned that that could be a stress source. Was that a conscious decision you made, or was it something that kind of just diffused itself into your being?
No, Roger, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe
Okay, and that's honest. That's
conscious
honest.
decision. Because I kind of did kind of researched a lot. Then only I chose. So in one sense, you can say it's a conscious decision.
Okay. Okay, that's fair. Thank you for sharing that. And so some values, yes, we could make a deliberate choice. Others we may have, but I can honestly say that the values that I carry, I can't say that 100% of them were deliberate choices. Some of them are inherited and probably warrant a re-examination. But even just being aware of this, and we'll get to that a little bit, could also be important. And the reason that I'm mentioning that is, what happens if we try to live by a value that is not native to our nature? So let's say, let me think. So one thing is we, at least in this Bhakti Yoga process, we meet. But let's say, and I can honestly say this, I grew up in a household where eating meat was the norm. So there was not necessarily a value on the quality of nonviolence toward animals. So at some point, I took that, let's say, inherited value, examined it, and said that value is not for me. I prefer this value of nonviolence, minimal impact to animals. But that requires a very conscious exercise to be able to work through all those different things. So that's kind of why I wanted to make that distinction between the values that we imbibe, just as kind of it's what we've absorbed throughout our life experiences, versus ones we have deliberately chosen. And that'll be an important concept as we go through the rest of this discussion. So I'm going to ask you all to do an exercise. You can type it out, or piece of paper and pen. And we're not going to like share and cross-examine and all this kind of stuff. I genuinely am presenting these exercises as hopefully a tool that is beneficial for all of us. And know for certain I'm also going to be doing these exercises with y'all. So it's not going to be just like, oh, do this, and then I'll, do something else. So I strongly believe that these can be valuable exercises in just understanding ourselves. So the first exercise is just get either an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper, however you want to do it, and just write down hour by hour, or 2-hour blocks if you don't want to be so specific. In the last 24 hours, what did you do? So it's 7:21 on my clock right now. So we'll give till 7:25 4, and then we'll just stop. Sound good? So last 24 hours. So we'll say as of 7 p.m. yesterday.
Okay, I want to welcome one student who joined.
Oh,
Yeah, Venkat Narasimha. So
nice to meet you.
welcome, Venkata. If you can speak.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have opportunities, but it's very nice to meet you, Venkata.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, my microphone was yeah. What is exactly that all the session about? Like how it's going to help the students? Like, sorry, I just joined in between.
No, that is very appreciated. Welcome.
Okay. So what can we expect out of the session? Like how it's going to help the other students?
Sure. So this is about, so the title or topic is stressed, depressed, and well-dressed. So the focus of it is on just understanding a little bit the nature of stress, which we covered, how that relates to our values, and then going through a series of exercises on understanding what our values are and the benefits of not only understanding, but applying and trying to live our life more aligned with those values. So not just accepting a set of values because that's what we have, but more shaking that up. And then toward the end, we'll also get a sense of what Bhagavad Gita has to say about some of these things.
That's great. Thanks.
And did everyone get a chance to complete the exercise? What did you do in the last 24 hours?
Sorry, I could not hear the exercise part completely, so I just joined again from my laptop.
Okay. Okay, so we can talk a little bit about this, but while we're talking, if you want to just write down, in the last 24 hours, what did you do?
Oh, okay. So shall I write it down or shall I tell?
Writing is better because my intention isn't that everybody just shares it. This is meant to be a personal tool as a first stage. So once you have your list of the things you did in the last 24 hours, what I'm going to ask all of you to do is, and try your best at least to remember. To be honest, it was a little bit of a stretch for me to remember the last 24 hours, but that's part of what having 2 little kids does to you. So look at your list and write the predominating feeling you experienced while you spent time in that way. And so 7:26 now, we'll say 7:29. We'll stop on that. So again, look at your list, and next to each item on your list, write the predominating feeling that you experienced during that part of your day.
So you want to share with you, or you want to write it down in a paper?
Write it down, type it on a computer, however you like. This is meant to be a personal exercise or tool for us to just analyze.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see, we have about a minute left. Unless everyone is done and ready to move on.
I am done, but I haven't written like timeline wise on hourly basis, kind of, because I don't have track of exact time frame.
Okay, that's okay. Nobody's judging. Nobody's going to cross-reference. Ah, Saket, you said you were doing this at this time, but person couldn't vouch for you. What's up? That's fine. As long as we get general trends in a day, I think this will be helpful. All right, so it's time. And so just take a second and look at your list. What is the general mood of the emotions that you were experiencing in the last 24 hours? Are they generally positive? Are they less than ideal, something to be desired? Do you feel good about looking not just at the list of the things that happened or the people that you interacted with, but how you felt about it? Because, for example, or as an example, I could have written like, I spent time talking to a relative, but perhaps the nature of that conversation was very stressful. So it was a bit of an emotionally draining experience, or it could have been very joyful. So what was the general mood of the emotions that you experienced in the last 24 hours? And if you want to share, like looking at mine, I realized there was a lot of feelings of exhaustion and stress, which I didn't really reflect on it till I did this exercise. And I'm like, wow, that doesn't look right. But what about others?
Oh, I am not able to trace out one emotion, like while I was busy, like while I was doing the project, or let's say while I was doing the assignment part. So I was not happy, certainly. I was not enjoying.
Okay.
But I was not stressed even. I just wanted that to finish it off. So I don't know what kind of emotion shall I draw or consider this.
So there's a really wonderful chart. Let me just see. Find it.
I'm not able to categorize that part of the time. Rest of the time I have categorized.
Okay. And total tangential, but sometimes just being able to identify and articulate a feeling can be immensely helpful. Just to face the feeling and then send it away, because we're not these feelings. Let me just open up a picture. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna share my screen just really quick. This is a total tangent, but just to help understand. So has anyone on this call seen this feeling wheel?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, okay.
Oh yeah, it's a wide range.
Yeah, so it helps us to refine, because each of these feelings are, they misspelled ecstatic, but that's a whole other thing. So I just think that's neat, and sometimes I find it very helpful. Again, total tangent. So we have this list, we have the general mood of these emotions, and now I want to hold that to the lens of our individual values in life. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Actually, it might be easier if I can just share the link. Where did it go? Oh yeah, here it is. So there's a website that has a list of 50 values just to maybe get the brain flowing. And what I'm going to ask us all to go through next is just to write down what we believe are our top 5 values that we espouse in our lives. The top 5 we believe are the values that we identify with. I put the link in the chat because it's a list and it's difficult to achieve that through a share. So everyone see the link in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. So just take a couple of minutes, read through it, think about it as well. Just because it's not on the list doesn't mean it's not a value. Again, just to give a little bit of framework of a value, which is something that is core to our being. We build our priorities from it. We build our likes and dislikes from it. We build the kinds of relationships, the kinds of decisions we make from it. So that's really what a core value results in, a symptom of a core value. Okay, so 7:34. So we'll give it till 7:37. And just choose 5, just your top 5. Need more time? Need more time?
No,
No? Okay.
like for me.
Okay.
Me neither.
Okay. Saket, Vedant?
Done, Raj.
Yeah, I'm also done.
Okay.
I found this thing very useful. I was browsing through other links as well in the same website.
Ah, okay. Okay. Now, just curious, a little bit of a reflection on your list. Did any of the values you chose as your 5, because I know I went through an exercise of like, oh, that resonates, and then scratched it out for another one that resonated more. Did anyone find it difficult to select 5?
No.
Okay. Was anyone surprised by one of the 5 that made it onto your list?
No.
Okay, that's a good start. And another question. So let's take a look at these last 24 hours that we spent. Did anything in the last 24 hours connect with our top 5 values?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What percentage of time would you say?
Like 20%, 25% kind of.
Okay.
Not 25%, 20%. Yeah.
It's okay. It's your own exercise. I would never know if it's 20 or 25 or 23.17. Okay. Okay. So just thinking about, but still that means that, let's see, so 20% roughly means 5 hours out of 24 hours, plus minus a little bit, were spent doing things aligned with your values, but the other 20 hours were spent, or 19 hours were spent doing something else that maybe isn't aligned with your values or doesn't directly resonate or connect with the values that you care about. So looking at these values, and we talked about some of the places where values come from family, from books, from social media, from culture, from education, from peers, etc. How many of those values, like look at those values that you wrote down and try to consider where you think they came from. So let's say, if I strongly value a career, is it because I had made this innate choice that a career makes sense given my nature, so I'm going to give it my all? Or is it something that was given to me by, let's say, a general culture? Like one thing that, do you all know Jay Shetty?
Yes.
Okay. So for those who don't know, he positions himself as an ex-monk who is a life coach, a voice of bringing in spiritual practices into everyday life in a very relatable way. And he shares it in a kind of funny way when he describes telling his parents that he was going to become a monk. And he said, in his family, you were either 3 things. You were either a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. So that didn't leave much wiggle room for individual preferences. So he had first started by pursuing the world of I think he was an intern at a finance company, and so just trying to make it big in that way. But one thing he realized is that that value, that direction he was headed, wasn't his. So when we're talking about things that we value, things that govern our actions and desires, the next thing I want to ask you is, where do you think those 5 values came from? And can we say that they are genuinely my values? Or are they based on the expectations of others? And so those values are, in a way, imposed or foreign to our tendencies, to our likes. So just think about that for a little bit. Because one source of stress is when a value is not innate, or it's not aligned with our nature, and we still, either others or ourselves, feel like we need to fulfill that expectation, rather than just being honest with ourselves and others that this value isn't working for me. This isn't important to me. This isn't what I want to base my life on. And that takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of clarity. And sometimes that's very difficult. Now, just talking again about the source of values and where they come from, there's a couple of things, and social media was mentioned, and media in general was also mentioned. There's this really amazing campaign that came out several years ago called the Dove Real Beauty campaign. Has anyone on this call seen it?
No.
No? Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna take a brief break just to show that, because it's really amazing how values that we may even think our own are actually so influenced, perhaps even subtly, to that they become part of our being without us even realizing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I'll also share audio. So give me a second. Okay. You can all see?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's not necessarily just the values that we can identify and trace back to where they came from. There's also an enormous cultural pressure to look a certain way, to act a certain way, that we maintain that well-dressed demeanor so that we can maintain a certain perception. Another quote used, which I'm going to paraphrase, is that something like that, well, the essence of it is my sense of value is dependent on not what I think of myself. It's not dependent on what somebody else thinks of me. It's based on my perception of what somebody else thinks of me. And that's how I start to perceive myself. So it becomes a very, it's kind of a simultaneous thing of trying to look outside of ourselves for a degree of validation, but that may or may not be an accurate portrayal. And that starts to shape our values, shape our direction, shape how we present ourselves to maintain that well-dressed appearance, even if it's actually a source of stress or anxiety. So in that way, then, we're teaching ourselves that when we feel stress or when we feel resultant depression or less than good feelings about ourselves or about a situation, we start to think that something's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? Because other people are showing themselves in a certain way, but I don't feel that way, or I'm not getting that experience. I'm not getting that outcome. So I must be doing something wrong. There's this statement that I've seen thrown around a lot, which I really love, which is if a fish was judged by its ability to climb, he would go through his entire life thinking he's a failure. So if we are experiencing that stress or less than positive or ideal emotions on a regular basis in our situations, it's not necessarily that something is wrong with me. It just might be that that situation is not the most appropriate for us, that our values and our life situation are not necessarily aligned. So when we look at our last 24 hours that we wrote down, And thank you for sharing that it was about 20 to 25% aligned. Why is our entire day not aligned with our values? Why do you think that is? And that's an open question. If somebody had 100%, then you can share your key to success with us. But for others that have less than 100%, why is that?
Because we might be feeling exhausted in the middle half of the way, and we lose interest in pursuing that.
Okay. Okay. So losing interest or maybe unclear focus, perhaps? Is that what you were saying, Venkata, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah. Basically, I just wanted to say that.
Okay. So that's an interesting point you're bringing up, because if we're not even clear on our values, then we can't maintain that level of focus. That's a really nice nuance you brought up. So thank you for that. Who else wants to share? Okay.
I don't know what could be the reason. Maybe uh, I was distracted. I don't know. I'm not able to trace out the reason.
Okay. And I applaud you for your honesty. And that's very true for, I think, many of us, and maybe not as a blanket rule, but even in situations where sometimes we don't give ourselves the space to understand why. But the nice thing is we have this time together. And so I'm going to ask you to take a couple of minutes and map out, what does your ideal 24 hours aligned with your values look like? Forget this business of, I have some project deadline tomorrow, or any other sources of a feeling like you're compromising. What does a 24 hours in, let's say, Vedant's life look like that is aligned with your values? So it's 7:50 right now. Let's take this and go till 7:53. And again, you don't need to share it or anything. This is meant to just be a helpful exercise for everyone here.
Oh, I was just again looking at the core values list, and I think the percentage 20% was a little wrong. It is somewhere hanging around 50%.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I missed one determination in the list somehow. So
Okay.
yeah.
You get bonus points for that then. Okay. All right. Did everyone have a chance to go through that exercise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's just look at those two lists. How close was your last 24 hours with that ideal state? So I guess maybe I'll share a little bit. So what I see was, at least for the most part, so this is where it's interesting, and I guess something that I got out of this is my last 24 hours compared with my 24 hours ideal are not too far apart. But what I'm realizing is actually my attitude towards some of these things needs an adjustment, because when I say, if I could do anything, what would I do? And it's actually the same thing. And so I'm realizing that my outlook on these things probably is in need of a little bit of a fine tuning. Like how I'm approaching it. Oh, could you hold on 1 second? I'm getting visitors. So if anyone else would just like to share either how close was that ideal, or was there anything that surprised you with this? Okay, and that's fine.
Yeah, it seems to be true what he said. It all depends upon the attitude that we carry, like um, not very much serious about the things that on the plate. What personally, what the 24 hours, past 24 hours, what I did was really stressed about the assignments and the projects. So the deadlines are coming up, and we started at the last moment. As I was a serial procrastinator, so I used to tend pick up things at the last moment. That's when all comes up. So when it ends up in doing nothing, so I used to stop in the middle of the way, and lot many times.
Now, an interesting thing is when you talk about procrastination, and you weren't the first person to bring that up on this call, it may not necessarily be, because when we procrastinate, that means we're spending time on something else instead of doing that thing with a deadline. So maybe that is an indication that maybe something isn't 100% aligned. That it's not a matter of forcing myself, okay, I'm just going to get more disciplined and do what I need to do in this block of time. But rather, maybe what we're doing isn't fully satisfying or inspiring.
Yeah.
That's the case, but throwing that out there as consideration.
Okay.
And so what it means to live a value-centered life is being clear on what brings us, so being clear on what is important to us and aligning our actions with those values. And naturally, happiness is an outcome of that. And there's different qualities of happiness. So there's the kind of happiness that comes from, let's say, an exploitative type of situation, or something that in Bhagavad Gita, they describe the 3 modes of material nature, where there's happiness from the mode of goodness, happiness from the mode of passion, and happiness from the mode of ignorance. Someone may make the argument that for somebody, drinking alcohol is a source of happiness, and that's aligned with their values. So who am I to deny them that kind of happiness? And so that's where the understanding the quality of the happiness, the quality of that situation becomes very important. And so just really quick, I'm going to share my screen again. And we're just going to look at one verse in Bhagavad Gita. It's 14:9, where Krishna says, O son of Bharat, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruit of action, and ignorance covering one's knowledge binds one to madness. And so just talking about the different ways that we ascribe happiness based on what the kind of mode that we're operating on. And modes are something that we'll dedicate a whole other discussion for. This is just a little sneak preview. So one way I've heard it described is happiness in the mode of ignorance. It is poison in the beginning and poison at the end. So the wording here used by Srila Prabhupada, who composed Bhagavad Gita as it is, says, whatever one does is good neither for him nor for anyone. But passion feels like bliss in the beginning and leaves a less than great feeling at the end. Either the kind of hollowness of, okay, this wasn't maybe exactly what I thought it would be, but let me pursue something else because that looks nice and shiny and new and exciting and I want to achieve it, I want to do it. And then pursuits in the mode of goodness. So let's take your university degrees, for example, where, okay, it's a lot of work. It may require a lot of perseverance, possibly a lot of late nights, well, definitely a lot of late nights. But there is a long-term satisfaction of this wonderful thing that you're all pursuing and achieving. So just understanding what we say our values are and the happiness associated with living by our values, also starting to get a sense of the quality of that happiness that comes from being aligned with the values. Because that quality of happiness in ignorance is nothing compared to the quality of happiness in goodness, or even beyond that, transcendental. So I'm just gonna go and stop sharing that. And so one obvious thought is, if I really want to just assess my values, two things to keep in mind. One, in Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, 35th verse, Krishna says, it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So one way we can internalize that is doing something because somebody told us to. So going back to the Shetty example, you're either a lawyer, a doctor, or a failure. That clearly wasn't the path that resonated with his values. And Krishna substantiating, yeah, that's okay. Because if you're aligned with your nature, then you're taking the medicine that is necessary and good for you. But if you're trying to take somebody else's medicine, it's eventually going to release poisonous effects. And Krishna's even saying, your own nature, your own duty, you may not execute it perfectly, but that's better than trying to be somebody that is not aligned with our values. So how can we understand our own values? One thing I think especially relevant for today, put our phones down, turn our laptops off. Don't be afraid to be alone with our thoughts. Really analyze, why am I doing what I am doing? Who am I doing it for? What does a different perspective look like? Are there common patterns in my daily reflection that I see cause me stress, cause me anxiety? What can or what should I be doing about it? What's that first step? And then also, most importantly, this process of bhakti yoga, there's a heavy emphasis on meditation, not just reflection, but active meditation. So trying to find the answers, understand our nature from within as well. And through that, a lot of this junk that we've been consuming for our whole lives through different subtle value influencers like media, like, and I shouldn't say junk because there are positive values also that come in these different ways, but these subtle values that we didn't willingly choose. We didn't make a deliberate choice to espouse these values. They'll start to come in the surface and we can analyze, is that really what I want? So we're at time, but I just wanted to find out if anyone wanted to share any thoughts or reflections on this. Or any other tips on how to just not only discover and analyze, but just try to be more aligned with our values. And And really being aligned with our values, understanding our natures is also a fundamental aspect, not just in a happy and satisfied life, but also a spiritually centered life. Because God made us all with individual personalities, likes and dislikes. He didn't expect us to all be clones. So there's room for us to be ourselves. Okay. If there are no other thoughts, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. And Akhilesh, it's nice to see you as well. Thank you for joining.
Sorry for joining late.
Well, thank you for coming. I'll look at it.
I joined like halfway there, and I saw there were like some people, and then I forgot I had something else to do, so I just like left for a bit, and then I came back.
Oh, okay. No, I mean
Sorry.
that's no, nothing to be sorry about. It's nice that you came, so thank you so much. And Venkata, also very nice to meet you. And Saket, Vedant, Vaishali, thank you so much as well for organizing and facilitating this. So
Thank you for organizing this talk for us.
oh, sure. It's certainly a pleasure. And so this is our last event for the semester. So wishing you all the best of luck with your final exams. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk soon, if not in January then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Edward.